Hello everyone, welcome to Emmy's Bookshelf. Welcome to my wrap up for May. May was a huge reading month. I actually finished a whole ton and it made me feel accomplished. It's something that I have been struggling with partially throughout the year, where I have been reading a little but not a lot. So now we are here and I have actually read a fair amount of things. So let's get into it and I will show you everything I have been reading and enjoyed. Let's start with my Agatha Christie's, because I did read a fair amount. It wasn't all in chronological order, but I did read a fair amount. So the first thing that I want to talk about, I'm not going in order. The first thing I want to talk about is And Then There Were None. This is just easy because I love it. It's 5 stars. I have a big video about it, but I just really love this one. And this is a classic whodunit, but it's really ominous and really creepy, and there are not many suspects available. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Once again, I listened to the Dan Stevens audio version, and I think it's just incredible with all of the voices and the sense of dread you get as you listen. It is incredible. Another one that I read was The Big Four. I finished it. Now, the way I read it was interesting. So I just got an audiobook from my library and that's how I was going to read it. And then I picked it up and I realized it's different. The audiobook that I read is different from this one because this is like the novel of it, whereas the audiobook was how it was originally published. And I found a link to an audio online, so I will link that for you if you want to check it out. I thought it was better than the novel version. So that is told in 12 short stories. It's the same idea, same premise, but it is told in short story format, which I think works better. Along with that, in that edition, they also did like advertisements with the narration, with the people reading these things like they would have been in the newspaper when she wrote it. So The Big Four, I gave 3 stars based on how it was originally written in a short story format, and I would love to own a copy in that format because all I have are the novelization, which is, it is what it is, but I think it gets a 3 star. Just the style made it better, in my opinion. The Big Four is about Hercule Poirot and Hastings when they are trying to solve this mystery of an international affair. The short story collection kind of covered multiple different situations where they were discovering the identities of 4 people who are trying to take over the world. Over the course of the 12 stories, you see Hastings working with Poirot, them trying to solve these little mysteries that end up being related, and how the police don't quite see the connection, but Poirot is determined to save the world. It is not her best work by any standard, but I think if you like audiobooks and you want to see a different way that this story might be better, try checking out the short story format. I know a lot of people do not like this book, but that's okay. This one, it's not her worst in my opinion, and I think that I appreciate it more by listening to the audio. So it's definitely not one I'd recommend as the first Christie, but it's one that I would check out via audio, at least that audio, if you are interested in this story at all. Another Agatha Christie I read was The Harlequin Tea Set and Other Stories. This one I gave 4 out of 5. So I rated each story individually and then put that together, and it comes out with 4 out of 5. So it's actually quite a good short story collection. I am not a short story reader by any means. It's been challenging trying to finish Agatha Christie's work because most of the stuff I have left are short stories, and these are not my favorite thing to read. I feel like I never get enough information or enough interest. I'm not intrigued enough. So this was actually really good. I enjoyed most of the stories. This had Hercule Poirot, but it also had Harley Quinn, and I read this over the course of a long time. I would pick it up and read one story and then I put it down and move on to another. This one, I think that most of the stories got 4 stars, except for one that got 5 and one that got 3 stars. So I would recommend this collection if you're wanting Christie short stories, this seemed good to me. There were also a fair amount of independent short stories as well, so that was good to see. And I am happy to mark this one off of my to-read list. The last Christie thing that I read was The Lost Plays of Agatha Christie, or Agatha Christie's Lost Plays. This is a radio drama that my library had, and I just grabbed it. I was like, oh, sure, I'll listen to it. And it was phenomenal. It was so good. So it has 3 short stories, or 3 plays that she wrote. And they are, I think, in the original radio drama that they were recorded as. So it was Murder in the Mews, A Personal Call, and Butter in a Lordly Dish. And I rated each of them individually, and believe me, they were spectacular. The first one, Butter in a Lordly Dish, I was kind of like, what's going on here? But I was invested. And then I gave it a 4, but I couldn't stop thinking about the twist. I couldn't stop thinking about it at all. So I had to give it a 5. It was phenomenal. The short story, the play, it was not a long one. It was maybe like 35 minutes, but it was great. It was about this lawyer who is trying to work through the courts. Obviously, he's doing his job and he's getting people convicted if they are guilty. He's displaying that for a jury, but he's quite a serial cheater, and it kind of comes back to bite him in some ways. So I don't want to go too far in because it is a short one, like I said, but I really recommend finding that play or listening to the radio drama. I will link, if I can, the Lost Plays collection, because that was really great. Because what they did then is they then had like an interview with Christie. So you got to hear Christie's words about some of her plays. When she talked about how she adapted some. She also talked about the Mousetrap and how that one was. You got to hear radio interviews from people who were in the Mousetrap when it was like 10 years down the line. And just different things. It was really cool to hear that radio aspect as well. That was like interviews and like behind the scenes information about Christie and her work, which was phenomenal. I really loved that. That pushed the collection over the top. The next one was Personal Call, and that one was an easy 5 stars. So good. It's about this man who, he gets his personal call at his home, and it's of his late wife who has passed away, and he flips out. He does not know what to do. He is a mess, and she is wanting him to meet her. She's wanting to meet him at the train station where they last saw each other, which is where she died. It is incredible. It was just so good. I loved it. I loved every second of it. I could not stop listening. So 5 stars for that one. Personal Call might be my favorite Christie play completely. Like, it was just so good. The next one was Murder in the Mews, which I gave 4 stars. So overall, the whole thing gets a 5 because it was just also phenomenal. But yeah, Murder in the Mews was a great play. It was a bit longer than the other 2, but honestly, it had the right stuff. It was fun, engaging, but it was also really mysterious, and I loved the twists at the end. I know I had read Murder in the Mews before, but I couldn't remember the ending, so I was happily surprised, and I just loved it. It was really great. You must listen to that if you can get your hands on that radio play edition. I read 2 Lori Wicks, so one of which, well, actually both of which were for the Buzzwordathon. So I read Every Little Thing About You, which is about 300 pages in this bind-up of the whole series. This one is a 4-star book for me. It's about Liberty, who goes by Libby. She's a deputy in her small town for her brother, who's the sheriff. And she manages to put this man in jail who isn't quite what she expects, and that's Slater. And it's a romance. It's a historical fiction, romantic, kind of comedy, It's Christian, and it's just so good. It's not a 5-star, but it is very good for me, and I really enjoy this series. I really love City Girl, so I'm gonna go to A Texas Sky next, and then we'll go to City Girl, and I'll have reread this whole series, which it's been a while, so that'll be good. The other one that I read was Every Storm, and this is my favorite Lori Wick book of all time. She has like 20 books out. This is my favorite. This one follows Lori, who is in the, during World War II, she's a teacher, and right at the beginning of the book, She and her sister are flying back home from Australia all the way to the US. When their plane goes down on an island, she survives, her sister dies, and the pilot dies, and she has to bury them both. And after about 6 weeks, she is found by a rescue or by a boat, a PT boat, and on it is Lieutenant Donovan Riggs, and he is quite surprised to find a woman in the middle of the ocean, and he's got to keep her safe now. It is a romance just like the other one, a historical fiction, but this takes place like just after World War II, and it's about the post-traumatic stress that would happen, the depression, the survivor's guilt. There's a lot of that in this book, and I'm also a sucker for secondary romances. Like if a book has a romance, but then there's a romance that's like not the main one, I'm a sucker for that, and this one has that. Just the best written one ever. So love them both, and they were both my Buzzword of Fun books, as every is in both title. Something else that I read was the Friendship Poems of Remy. This one I purchased because I really wanted the complete set. I have the other two, and this is just a beautiful edition, or beautiful books. They're like just so stunning, the poetry, and I didn't love the poetry in this one. It was kind of like a 3-star poetry book for me, but I enjoy the reading experience, and I think it's aesthetically a beautiful book to see. And I'm happy that I read it. I do enjoy Remy's poetry, so it was not a bad thing. It just wasn't as great as the other ones. I also reread Pride and Prejudice. I needed an audiobook, and this one was perfect. I have the Rosamund Pike audiobook, so I re-listened to that. Just a brilliant listen again, 5 stars. Always love reading Pride and Prejudice, and always love seeing new things and new characters in new ways. The next one that I read was In All Things by Melissa Kruger. This one is a nonfiction Bible study about Philippians. So I actually read Philippians about 5 times, I think, over the course of a 9-week period. But in this one, it just has the different sections where you have, sorry, I'm just trying to find like an example. So in it, you have the Philippians content, the actual Bible scriptures, and then you talk about, at least in this, what it means, what it's about, what kind of things can we learn from it, and you can take it back to a group study and talk about it. So I gave this book 5 stars. There were a couple of things I didn't agree with theologically, like 100%, but I'm like, that's pretty good for a book, and it's pretty solid in my opinion. So I would recommend it if you're looking for something that's not overly heavy, but also something that gives you some good meat to discuss. So yeah, recommend this one a lot. I have a couple of ARCs and a couple of ebooks that I read that I don't own, so let's go through those. I read The Earl's Cinderella Countess by Amanda McCabe, or McCabe. Anyways, this one is about, Eleanor, who's called Ella, and she is a matchmaker because she is now kind of on her own. Her father died, there's no one to take care of her. And this is Regency England, so if you're looking for a Jane Austen book, this might be one for you. And she is matchmaking in Bath when she comes across her old friend Frederick, who is now a lord, an earl, and he needs a countess. So she's trying to set him up, but he is in love with her and he only wants her. So it's just really an interesting one. I don't think I would reread it. And it was kind of like, it was clean, but then at the end, it wasn't the last chapter. So it kind of shocked me. It was like, it was good for the whole thing. And then at the end, it was not. So, and that's just my thing. So if you don't care about that, if you want a bit of spice in your books, that's fine. It wasn't that spicy. It was just surprising. It came at the end. So if you're looking for clean Jane Austen retellings, this one is one that you can pick up and then just be mindful the end kind of talks a little about. So you just skip that bit. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a good retelling. I thought it was fun to see in Jane Austen's world and have the different characters of Bath and how society looks then played out in a Cinderella story. So recommend that. I also read A Mommy for Easter, which is by Linda Goodnight. And this one follows a couple. I don't remember their names, but they were married and then they divorced because of some things that happened. And she is very surprised to see that he moved back into town and now he has a 3-year-old daughter. And she is shocked because suddenly she's being reunited with someone. So this is a second chance romance. This is a Christian, like, sweet romance, and it takes place over the build up to Easter holiday. So the town is kind of conspiring to throw them together as much as possible because they love them as a couple. It is just a really, really heartwarming book. I think I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you're looking for anything like that. I know it's not Easter weekend, but you can definitely read it. And that was an arc that I should have read before Easter weekend, so I'm sorry. But check it out because it is a really good one. I also read A Visitor's Guide to Victorian England by Michelle Higgs. This one took me a while to read. I started reading it in October, so it took me about 7 months to read, and it's not that long. I think I just didn't get heavily invested, and I don't know if it's a me thing, a content thing. I'm not a massive lover of his Victorian England information. So I do enjoy classics, but Victorian classics just seem to, some are hit and some are miss for me. And it's not my favorite type of like time period to read about. So I don't know. It's one of those things where as a classics reader, I know everyone's like Victorian classics. Like there are gems, but there are also some lumps of coal for me personally. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle there. But this one covered a lot of like how life actually was in that time period. So the book, I remember, started with like you're arriving to London. What does transportation look like? And so it would go through in a whole chapter. What does transportation look like? Is it a wagon? Is it a stagecoach? Where do you sit in the stagecoach? Is it a train? Is it a cab? Is it a bicycle? All of these things are covered in the transportation category, or the transportation chapter. The next chapter, I don't remember what the order of the chapters were, to be honest, but another chapter was about food. What should you eat? What should you not eat? Where do you get it? How much does it cost? And so it was very much like a tour guide's view, and it was like transported back to the 1800s. Clothing, relationships with other people, where do you stay, sleeping arrangements. It was just all of those things were kind of covered, and it was interesting. I think I just needed to take a break from the content sometimes. So I would read a section and then I'd put it down for a month or two, and then I'd pick it up and read another section and then put it down. It was just one of those things I could go back to whenever I was needing something to read and I wasn't interested in anything else at the time. And it did keep my interest, but I didn't want to continue reading more. So I give it a 3-star. I think it's kind of a combination of my interest level along with maybe book. I'm not sure, but 3 stars. So it's not a bad rating at all. And if you're interested in Victorian world, how that would have looked like to actually functionally live in, check out this book. It was one I would recommend. It's just not my book, I think. The last thing that I read was The Silent Corner by Dean Koontz. This one was from my book club, and we were blown away. Everyone enjoyed it a lot. I thoroughly loved it. I flew through it so quickly. This one is a science fiction thriller, and I'm really emphasizing the science fiction because I think it doesn't look like that from the summary, but it really is sci-fi heavy, like really, and I really enjoyed it. It follows Jane, whose husband was happy, he was enjoying life, he was really engaged with everything around him, making plans for the future, and then he shot himself. And she is so confused because she's like, what triggered this? Like, what happened? I don't understand. And then she realizes lots of other people are doing the same thing. People who have no reason or no history of mental health struggles or no history of depression. And it's like an epidemic. So she is on the run from basically the government trying to figure out what it is. She works for the FBI, so she has some connections, but she is on a leave and she is trying to figure this out, but people do not want her to figure this out. There is something going on and she's not supposed to know. It was so good, so fast-paced. I couldn't have predicted where it went, and it's a 5-book series, so we need to read more. I have never read a Dean Koontz before in my life, and I was like, the first one, I need to read more of Dean Koontz. That's gonna be an author I need to pick up a lot more books from because, yeah, phenomenal. Really enjoyed it, and I am excited to read more in that Jane Hawk series, but also just in general because that was brilliantly written, and I really, really enjoyed it. So The Silent Corner was phenomenal. And those are the books I read in June. I have been a reading machine, and I am enjoying it a lot. I love your comments though about what you've read, and if you've read the books I've read and want to discuss them, or if you're going to pick them up in the future, I'd love to know all of that as well. If you'd also like to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you are new here, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye for now.
In a house that I don't know,